Took me years to make the city into the capital of crime. I need something for my final act, a performance Batman and Napier will never see coming. The joke only I know about. Today on the Comic Book Report, Batman, Curse of the White Knight. Stick around and check it out. Greetings from Gotham, everyone. My name is Dominic, and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today, I'm really happy to say I am back in the world of Batman White Knight. I loved the first collection set in this world, and I couldn't wait to dive into this sequel. As always, if you're interested in picking up your own copy, I highly recommend you check out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. You can use my code, TheComicBookReport, at checkout to get $2 off of your order today. Please note, if you make a purchase using my affiliate code or link, I will earn a small commission, but it's a great way to support our channel at no additional cost to you. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's dive into today's collection. First, some quick facts. The issues in this volume were written and illustrated by Sean Murphy. The issues in this volume were first published by DC Comics beginning in 2019. The volume itself collects Batman, Curse of the White Knight, issues 1 through 8, and Batman White Knight Presents Von Freeze number 1. And finally, this standard size hardcover comes in at 272 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that standard size hardcover from DC Comics. And right from the jump, I'm happy to say that this does have a glossy print paper stock, and it's brought to us by DC's Black Label. The dust jacket overall has a really sleek design. I really like the reds and yellows and blacks that make up a lot of the colors in this volume. Very, very sleek. Love to see it on the dust jacket itself, and really excited for this collection. For those that perhaps do not know, this is a follow-up to the Batman White Knight that was also written by Sean Murphy. So while this is kind of a self-contained story and it's not considered a volume 2, I would still recommend that you check out Batman White Knight as it establishes the world, the characters, and a lot of the narrative threads that this sequel builds on. Now we're going to go ahead and take one final look at the dust jacket along with the inner flaps before transitioning over to give you a look at the under the dust jacket hardcover artwork we have for this edition. As you may be able to tell from these covers, a predominant character in this Curse of the White Knight series is the character of Azrael, who we remember from around the Nightfall era in the traditional Batman canon. Now this is part of Black Label outside of the main continuity, but when I heard all about this, I was excited to see Murphy's spin on this character. As much as I love the dust jacket for this collection, I have to say the art they printed onto the hardback itself is maybe even more gripping. Love to see Azrael, and then on the back we have Batman. Even the spine looks very cleaned up. I like all the white space that they did with some of these covers. Very, very good looking, and I just wanted to show you here what you can expect should you choose to pick up a copy of this hardcover. I mean, just look at that spread. It's absolutely amazing. I think the artwork Murphy provides is just exceptional. Very, very good. I should note as well, while this was written and illustrated by Sean Murphy, the coloring was provided by Matt Hollingsworth, and Klaus Janson supplied the art for the Von Freeze story at the end of the collection. And just real quick, a look at the glued binding. I will say the binding overall was fair for this collection. No big complaints, even though there is a bit of gutter loss. Other than that, a really well-made collection, and again, so happy to see glossy pages. And now as we transition into the book itself, I wanted to provide a brief primer or context for the White Knight universe. Essentially in the first volume, we have the Joker becoming sane and becoming a kind of virtuous figure in the Gotham community. This kind of turns everything on its head as he's beloved and accepted by the populace, and Batman's kind of made out to be a savage villain. Ultimately, Joker reverts to his normal maniacal self, but it's a really fascinating narrative. We have a very interesting spin on the character of Joker, who, when he becomes sane, reverts to his previous character, Jack Napier. We also have a very layered and nuanced Harley Quinn figure in this universe. At any rate, that story is its own, and I won't spoil much more for you. For Curse of the White Knight, however, it all takes place after the events of White Knight. Joker is imprisoned again, Batman is trying to do better and still stalking the Knight as the costumed crime fighter. Now, as I mentioned at the top of this video, this is not necessarily considered a volume 2. It is a very good self-contained story. However, it builds off of the world and narrative we have from that first White Knight volume. I would say instead of feeling like you're in the middle of a run in a volume 2 kind of scenario, this really feels a lot like how they did Batman Earth 1, that series by Jeff Johns. I reviewed some of those on the channel before, and those had a similar feel, where each graphic novel collection was its own kind of self-contained story, even though each subsequent volume built atop this universe it was building within its own universe. The same is true in Murphy's White Knight universe. Again, would highly recommend that first volume, but that being said, this is still a very good story with its own beginning, middle, and end. And as we transition into the story, one of the things I will mention again is this is a very, very big Azrael story. You don't have to know anything about that character, but if you are familiar with him from maybe Batman Nightfall, or the Sword of Azrael, or any of his other canonical appearances, it does make this universe's version kind of fun just to see the distinctions, the differences, and how they personify this character in the White Knight universe. I have to say, I think that's a pretty big swing. I certainly didn't expect Azrael being the primary character in this sequel overall, but I'm really happy with how it was executed, and overall, I have to give it up for Sean Murphy for not leaning too hard on Joker in this volume. With Joker basically being the primary character in the first White Knight volume, I was nervous to see how he was handled in this one, and Joker is certainly a presence here, a good secondary character, but he's not directly in the spotlight in this volume, and I think that that is to this volume's strength. This is really Batman trying to stop Azrael, although Azrael is kind of an extension of some of the stuff Joker is planning for his alleged final act to bring down Batman and Gotham, but Joker kind of goes into the background a little bit. You have Batman really trying to hunt down Azrael, try to find leads, try to work things out with some of his once comrades like Nightwing and Batgirl, his relationship with James Gordon. All of these things are just really handled and navigated really well. After the events of White Knight, Nightwing and Batgirl are part of the, I think, GPO or something like that. It's sort of a privatized kind of policing unit that uses vigilantes, and they're kind of not necessarily on Batman's side. Batman's trying to do his kind of own thing to bring down the bad guys in Gotham City. We also have this shady organization with this woman who represents the so-called Gotham elite, these kind of rich, maybe mobsters or organized crime, kind of bad billionaires that are secretly running and pulling the strings behind a lot of what goes on in Gotham. We have a feeling that Batman, or rather Bruce Wayne, is one of these characters unknowingly. This organization seems very powerful, they know who Batman is, and they're basically saying, hey, Bruce Wayne / Batman, you need to kill this program that Jack Napier, the once Joker, when he was still good, implemented in Gotham that would actually help the citizens of Gotham, but hurt all of the elite that are kind of ruling over from the sidelines. And Batman, of course, doesn't want to do that. He wants crime to go down. He wants the people to feel free and just and things like that. But he's kind of finding that the way this organization is enmeshed in Gotham City, he can't really fight them without outing himself as Bruce Wayne, which would be detrimental to his entire life. He could lose out on his fortune and all the crimes he's kind of helped wrap up as Batman. The legality of all of the convicts would come into question. All these things because of his vigilantism. Anyway, a really interesting sort of undertone and kind of subplot throughout this volume, how he navigates kind of the righteousness of what he's doing and how Gotham would perceive him, if Gotham needs him to function like that, or if Gotham needs him to do something more than dress up as Batman. Overall, this is always kind of simmering in the background throughout this whole run here before culminating in kind of the finale of this book. I think the pacing was really well done. We have kind of slow burning of some of these other subplots, while we really feel like in the primary we're trying to figure out what's going on with Joker's plan and this character Azrael, who's begun murdering people. Does he work for this shadowy elite organization, or is he on his own mission? We find that Azrael is part of the Order of Saint Dumas, who's kind of this weird religious cultist who believes he's kind of an angel of death. It's really creepy, and again, it really touches with some of the canonical Azrael stuff, which was interesting to see. We also have an appearance of the Bat kind of mechanized suit that was popular in the Batman Nightfall era. And I just found it to be really compelling. Another kind of narrative device they use in this storytelling is a sequence of flashbacks from when Gotham is being founded hundreds of years ago. There are the family of the Waynes and the family line for Azrael and the Order of Saint Dumas, and how they kind of overlap and how they kind of maybe join forces in the New World to create this city, to liberate it from this forces of darkness and oppression. And you get the sense that Azrael's family and Bruce Wayne's family kind of go way back, and that perhaps the Wayne family wasn't as virtuous in how they handled kind of that line of Azrael's and the Order of Saint Dumas. And throughout the story, we get a lot of flashback sequences from the ancestors and how that maybe affects Gotham in the present. This is the curse aspect of Curse of the White Knight. We have a lot of these familial legacies and these kind of buried secrets from the past. Batman is made aware of these connections and some of these stories when he finds a hidden journal that Alfred hid away from him. He kind of uncovers some of these old entries from hundreds of years ago and is trying to piece together the mysteries, as he believes Azrael is acting not at the wish of the Joker or at the wish of this organization that represents the elites, but ultimately his own crusade based upon this ancestral grudge and kind of vendetta. And you're trying to unravel all of that as we also unravel all of those other subplots I was talking about. And again, it's just done really well. I feel like the narrative is really layered. It works on a lot of great levels, and across 8 issues, it was fantastically paced. I never felt like the issues were bloated, and I never felt like they were so slight that they just had no substance. I feel like every issue was packed just enough that I was always asking for more, and I really loved that in the book, and I think the culmination of the story arc was perfect for this. Throughout the pages as well, we have a lot of incredible action sequences. We get a lot of great action shots with the Batmobile and with Azrael fighting Batman or Azrael fighting Commissioner Gordon. We have a lot of interesting narrative developments with Batgirl, because something happens to Commissioner Gordon in the pages of this comic that frankly turned Batgirl's world upside down. I really loved how Sean Murphy was unafraid to shake up these characters and shake up kind of the dynamics we have within the Gotham law enforcement agency. Curse of the White Knight also has Renee Montoya as the commissioner for most of this volume, and we have her alongside Bullock, Nightwing, and Batgirl, and a couple other cops trying to help Batman capture Azrael and figure all this stuff out. Again, there's a lot of narrative beats within this storyline too that I don't want to spoil absolutely everything for you, so you have a chance to read it for yourself. But to suffice it to say that a lot of this book leads up to a final confrontation between Batman and Azrael, addressing this curse and family legacies and who their identities are, where they stand, what they stand for, and how to best serve Gotham City. And I think it's really great. I think that there is kind of a nobility even to this Batman, who in the last volume was treated as a villain. We have an almost kind of redemption arc for this Batman or Bruce Wayne, and I really liked seeing that. This is still a very heroic and aspirational and hopeful Batman, and I liked seeing that even with all of the death and destruction raining down from all around him. I also like his relationship with the people of Gotham and how he's sincerely trying to do right by them. I am so fascinated as to where Sean Murphy will continue to go in this Batman White Knight universe. I know they've released a Batman White Knight like Harley Quinn volume, and they're also doing a like Beyond the White Knight that I think has a Batman Beyond. I think that collection comes out in a few months, so some of you might have already read that, but this is as far as I've gone with Batman White Knight, and I am loving it. I think that this volume might be just about as strong as the first volume, which I realized I have not yet reviewed on this channel, but maybe I should. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. But I will say that this volume was an excellent sequel. I think that anyone who's read the first volume would be absolutely satisfied at this follow-up effort. I think it really stands above some of its peers as far as other ongoing Batman titles or other recently released Batman collections. This is one that I think is a must-read for Batman fans. Now that I've provided kind of a basic layout, for some of the storytelling, I did want to take a moment to talk about the art a bit more. I love Sean Murphy's art in the first White Knight collection, and I'm happy to say that his art is extremely consistent going into volume 2. I would basically think this was the first volume all over again. So because of that, there's such a fidelity to this universe and these character models that this is distinctly the White Knight universe. And I love that. Some notable features about Murphy's art in this collection: if you've never read the Batman White Knight franchise, his art is very high detailed, the scenery is very immersive, and I really like that. I think there's a lot of hard, kind of sketchy edges and work done with the character models, a lot of sharp angles, and it really provides a kind of grittiness to this artwork. It doesn't feel soft, it doesn't feel calming, it feels like you're just kind of on edge, and maybe that's because of all the edges everywhere. But it has that kind of gritty, kind of crime comic feel to it in the artwork, and I think that really lends itself well to the Batman universe. In fact, I would love to see Sean Murphy let loose on something like Daredevil, because I think this kind of artwork would really lend itself to more street-level, gritty, crime kind of comics, and I think Daredevil and Batman both can do that exceptionally well, and so I think that Sean Murphy is so incredible doing his own art for this incredibly well-written narrative. Again, his pencil work is just as strong as the first volume, if not more so. I love to see how he realized Azrael. They made him a lot more hulking and imposing than the Jean-Paul Valley we get in the standard canon, and I really liked that. I think that the way he did the flashback sequences throughout this volume were also just really well done. We get a sense that it is really from a different time, and I enjoyed that as well. I wonder how much fun he had creating these set pieces and some of these illustrations, because again, the world is so immersive, and I think so much of that is done by just his incredible artwork. And the coloring by Hollingsworth, again, we have a lot of warm and dark colors, your red, your oranges, your kind of gross yellows. We have black and white, and there's just so many striking contrasts in the coloring throughout this that I get why they really want to make the billing known for Matt Hollingsworth, as he did an exceptional job. I think for the art alone, this collection probably couldn't be missed. Now that I've talked about the art, I do want to speak for a few moments regarding some of the characters we have in this book that I really liked. I think that the depiction we get of Harley Quinn in this volume and the previous volume is really well done. This is one of the most nuanced versions of Harley Quinn I've had the pleasure of reading in comic books. We don't have the psychological depth that we might in something like Harleen by Stepan Sajak, which I reviewed last year, I believe, on the channel. That is maybe my golden star kind of staple for Harley Quinn for modern comic readers, but I think the Harley Quinn we have in this volume is maybe just as compelling. She's a really rich character that they do even more with in this follow-on volume, and I really, really like her as a character. In fact, I'm really eager to check out that White Knight Harley Quinn collection, just because how they characterize her in this universe lends so much agency and just depth to that character. They make her kind of this, if not heroic, certainly more virtuous and leveled version of Harley Quinn. You can see Dr. Quinzel within this character. She doesn't feel like a lunatic. She doesn't feel raving mad. Rather, she's someone who fell deeply in love with someone who had his own mental health issues and ultimately became something monstrous. And in this volume, we actually have her as a pregnant mother for most of it, which is its own bag of tricks narratively. I think it was really a fun addition to have her back in this volume. We also have kind of a romantic subplot between her and Batman, which I really, really enjoyed as well. I think especially given the history between Joker, Batman, and Harley Quinn, even within this White Knight universe, the capacity for character drama and relational drama because of this sort of triangle was definitely felt in this volume, and I think handled very, very well. I think for that alone, if you're a Harley Quinn fan, this might be worth picking up for you. I know that this isn't a canonical Harley Quinn, but I think she was just handled very well. She was, again, given a lot of richness to a character. She doesn't feel like an add-on or just sort of a cap on top of other good characters. She is one of the driving forces within the narrative, and I think that she has a lot to do as a character. I already mentioned it as well, but I also really liked how they did Batgirl. She deals with a lot of trauma within this volume. I think my only complaint is I would have loved to see even more Batgirl within this Curse of the White Knight. I have a similar issue with Nightwing. I think that both of those characters were largely pushed to the background within this storytelling, and I think that we could have used maybe a little bit more of them. Now, maybe they weren't giving more of a centered spot because we got much more of Renee Montoya and Bullock, and I really liked what we did with those characters. And maybe that was the point. Maybe Sean Murphy was more selective on the characters he gave more of a spotlight in this volume. I think primarily this was a Batman Azrael story with a lot of Harley Quinn involved. I would say that those three are probably the main characters within this book, and I would certainly say that's to the strength of this book. And I know we've already reached the extras, but I'd be remiss not to mention the Von Fries story that's included after The Curse of the White Knight and before these extras. It's sort of a standalone story that does tie in really well between some of the issues of Curse of the White Knight, but I do get why they included it at the end because you can just have it as an extra. Basically, it flashes back to the moment Bruce Wayne is born and how Victor Fries in this universe actually delivers him. And while that's all happening, Victor Fries recounts the story of his father, who was sort of a Nazi scientist, and all of this crazy story about the ice gun technology and where Victor Fries, the future Mr. Freeze, actually comes from in his character history. And it's just a really interesting story that sometimes feels a bit out of place, but again, it makes this White Knight universe feel all that much more full, and to have Klaus Janson on pencils, it is still a really striking story and a fun addition to the collection. After that Von Fries story, we have all of these extras we've been flipping through, some of the different spreads and cover art, and then all of the sketch work. I really liked this. I think that the extras at the back were a ton of fun, and I'm so happy that this was a glossy hardcover. Of course, I would have loved sewn binding in an oversized format, but I'm still ecstatic at this release from DC Comics, and I think that this goes really nicely aside the already released Batman White Knight, but dang, maybe I should find a hardcover of that. At any rate, let me know what you think of Curse of the White Knight or the Batman White Knight universe in general below, and let's go ahead and give this collection a grade. For the most compelling and all-around best comic book sequel I've read in recent memory, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Batman Curse of the White Knight by Sean Murphy an A-. This is definitely a must-read for Batman fans in my opinion. Start with the first volume and then definitely make your way to Curse of the White Knight. I think there were a lot of fun twists and turns here. I think the characters were all handled very respectfully, and yet we got to see so many of them in a striking new light. I love this kind of side pocket universe that we explore in this Black Label title, and generally just think this is worth the read. Definitely check it out as well if you're a fan of Harley Quinn or of course Azrael. There's a lot to love here, and while Joker is no longer the main focus, he's still heavily felt and present throughout. At any rate, let me know what you thought of this review, and thank you so much for watching. This has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to like this video and maybe check out some of my others. And until next time, have a good one.